The Rebel Alliance had officially formed that day. With a shift and a large attack force, they were able to aid the Garbage Collective in their victory against Sheev Palpatine. However, the now fractured Empire would fight on. Plans for a new republic began to take shape. Bail Organa, Baron Papanoidia, and Jar Jar Binks were key figures in planning out this new system of government. The Hutt cartel was now in positive light. Despite their criminal endeavors, the future New Republic already planned to pardon them for any known crimes, in thanks for their actions against the Empire. Gracchus would finally convince Jabba that the Gamorrean Guard proved ineffective in battle, and thus the cartel would be outfitted with HK droids as suitable replacements. Jabba's inability to foresee the betrayal of the Empire would cost him his position in the cartel. Gracchus would become the de facto Don of the entire Hutt cartel. He worked with a man named Kyber to now take into possession all of Don Ondar's artifacts, and then he would look into obtaining the rest of the Quarantine World 3. Goss Zahn and Bonak Rad would go on to be labeled as galactic terrorists. Goss was hell-bent on wiping out the Dug people, who are now considered to be an endangered species. Bonak did convince Goss to, at the very least, help him rid the galaxy of his own kind, and so the pair traveled to Geonosis and sterilized the planet with gas containers they stole from an Imperial weapons facility. Bonak Rad was now the last of his kind. Saul Guerrero would continue to fight against the Imperial remnant. His methods would not change, and many in the galaxy would also consider him to be a terrorist. He remained paranoid and claimed the Imperial remnant was trying to get their hands on a secret weapon the Empire had been working on. Dictor von Doomcock returned to his secret lair in the center of the planet Serrano. He started making propaganda videos against the Imperial remnant, claiming they were going woke and that the galaxy would not stand for it anymore. Cyclone Koss would continue to work for the Garbage Collective. Without his leader to directly lead his path, he just continued his normal affairs in the way he imagined he was supposed to. He worked hard in the assumption that the Garbage Collective would need to be ready again someday. Yugai Suko would continue to work for the Garbage Collective in fear that if he attempted to leave this life, his life would end. Bosk would return to Gracchus for work. However, he would take Shaky on as a sort of apprentice. The pair would become a famous bounty hunting duo. Bosk worked for credits and mainly for fun, while Shaky worked strictly for booze. Murg would stay involved in Brondo Industries. Without the shadow of the Empire, they quickly became the leading business of the galaxy. Flamio would remain a fry cook for the Crash and Burn. In his spare time, he returned to being a serial arsonist. However, he only attacked abandoned places. Crash would return to the bartending life, and through the help of Nexus, Crash would rally together the remaining Clone Wars veterans all across the galaxy. Noxus would travel to Coruscant and create a show based solely around punching people in the balls. However, he would also be approached about being in the Holo film called There Are Heroes No More. Duke Toro would retire shortly after these adventures. He had been diagnosed with a terminal case of lumbago and wished to live out the rest of his days in peace. Despite Akmina's feelings for Ra, ultimately it didn't work out. He could still remember when a woman ripped his heart out. However, he remained as usual at the bar on Tatooine when he returned. Josiah Joestar and the other prophets would join Ra on his ranch on Tatooine. Thanks to Brondo, they were able to grow plants on Ra's ranch, the only vegetation on all of Tatooine, and enough for the prophets to stay with him and survive. The rest of the Lihwek people would stay in contact through Sunday service on the HoloNet, but ultimately their people would be free to roam the galaxy. Tobias Beckett would continue to work for the Shadow Collective. However, now that the crime lord Maul seemed to have just walked away from the life, the Shadow Collective would ultimately start to fall apart. Rusty and his men would return to Tatooine. They would steal, do spice, and have raves, as per usual. Jarl Poof would survive his encounter with Gracchus, but was now bound to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Despite his feelings towards the collective, he decided to actually do as Skip wanted since they rescued him from Luwek. He traveled to Kamino with the DNA samples Skip received from Quarantine World 3 and requested assistance on a special project. Watto would remain loyal to the new droid army. This was a new start for him, and now that the droid army was being cast under a new light thanks to their actions in the final battle, it seemed as though this new republic would undo the outlawing of the existence of these droids. The surviving Gungans would travel to the planet Malastare, which they now claimed as their own. Ewan and Bubby would go off and get the lay of the land. The former Jedi Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ram Koda, Ahsoka, and the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn would ultimately speak to Kiz Kodo, Roy, and Wara about the possibility of a new order. This order would not purely be light side, but would be closer to something more akin to the Grey Jedi Order. Kiz Kodo would join this order in a leading role, and manage to convince the others of the Order to accept Maul as well. While Maul was not completely redeemed, he was much closer to a neutral point in the Force now than he had ever been in his entire life. Anakin would be given prosthetics in order to survive outside of the Bacta tank. However, the drugs did have a long-term effect on him. While he was not completely stripped of the Force, it was enough to ensure he would never be as powerful as he once was. He was placed in the prison known as the Citadel until the Order could decide what to do with him. Roy would also accept his invitation to be a part of the Order. He would be approached by Obi-Wan Kenobi, who wished Roy to join him on a quest to take Luke Skywalker to Alderaan to meet his sister, Leia Organa. These children were the children of Anakin Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi wished for Luke and Leia both to be brought into this order and trained. Roy now wished to have an heir to the Brondo estate. He asked Ahsoka Tano out on a date, to which she said yes. As for where things go from there, we still do not know. Roy was now galactically famous as the man who killed the Emperor. The Imperial Remnant wanted him dead, but the rest of the galaxy has considered him a hero. Brondo's brand has done so well for the galaxy that many planets that could not hold life, such as Tatooine, now can, thanks to Brondo. Bisect and his droids and his beast companions would repair the World Devastator and add it to the fleet. They would travel back to Quarantine World 3 and tame the Zillo Beast, before then going to Mustafar and sieging Vader's castle. He would then go on to make contact with this up-and-coming Grey Jedi Order with information regarding the biotic droids that he now wished to bring into existence, that would have access to the Force. Rudy remained a warden and dragged his prisoners with him to Mandalore. He followed Wara, whom he had a life debt to. The Mochalorians rallied as Wara and Bo-Katan rose to the leadership roles of the planet. Wara became the Mandalore of many titles: the Invincible, the Unwavering, the Steadfast, the Relentless, the Unstoppable, the Zealous, the Badass, the Intimidating, the Hater of Jarl Poof, and as most called him, Mandalore the Redeemer. It was discovered that Wara's father had intended to be in the final battle alongside of them. However, he was keeping the Imperial forces from attacking Mandalore yet again. Wara had redeemed the family's honor, but now his father had felt that he had redeemed a little piece of himself as well. And he is very proud of Wara. Tiny would officially become a Mochalorian, and Parnir, who at this point had Stockholm Syndrome, now wished to pursue that life as well. Wara would stay in contact with this Grey Order, but was a little too busy with the title of Mandalore to be directly involved. Mandalore, like the rest of the galaxy, celebrated victory. They unfortunately celebrated without the fallen hero, Fricky Frick. As for Skip and 000, nobody's really for certain what happened to them. They've never been seen since after they flew off into space with the windows down. The only thing that seems to be certain is that Star Wars, never changes.